The Emirates Green Tower project was the kind of ambition that defined Dubai's skyline. A 40-story sustainable skyscraper that aimed to exceed every known standard of efficiency, strength, and innovation. At the helm of the design selection was Rashid al-Mansuri, a structural engineer with 30 years of experience constructing the city's most iconic edifices. His reputation was sterling. When developers needed flawless blueprints built on desert land that kissed the sky, they called Rashid. On a sunlit morning in 2019, in his office overlooking the desert and glass towers, Rashid sat evaluating the final proposals for lead engineering firms. Folders neatly stacked, bridge designs, steel cantilever plans, concrete load calculations. It was all familiar territory. Then a thick green-trimmed folder arrived from Manila. It was from Garcia Engineering Solutions, and the cover boldly declared a sustainable vertical design led by Filipino engineer Carlos Garcia. Rashid didn't know who Garcia was, and he certainly didn't expect the folder to contain a bamboo-integrated structural concept. But there it was, detailed sketches, material analyses, hybrid lattice frameworks, all centered on a claim so audacious it made Rashid laugh out loud. That laugh wasn't polite. It was dismissive. Bamboo in Dubai? Rashid thought they were joking. Little did he know that this thick Manila proposal wasn't just another eccentric idea. It was the beginning of a seismic shift, one that would challenge assumptions, redefine engineering, and shock an industry built on tradition. Rashid flipped through the pages of Garcia's proposal, amusement building like a wave. He saw diagrams that suggested bamboo could replace or reinforce conventional materials at scale. He saw tensile strength comparisons, sustainability rankings, and hybrid lattice schematics that bore an almost organic precision. The farther he read, the harder he laughed, that hearty, echoing laugh that filled the spacious office and startled his assistant. "Is something wrong?" she asked, peering over his desk. When he showed her the bamboo lattice concept, she blinked, unsure whether to be confused or impressed. "It's bamboo," he said, shaking his head, as though the word itself were preposterous when applied to skyscrapers. Does he expect us to build a hut? In Rashid's view, skyscrapers were engineered from steel and concrete precisely because those materials had proven reliability under load, heat, wind, and seismic stress. Bamboo might be sustainable, the proposal crowed, but in his 3 decades of construction in the Gulf, nothing was more important than certainty. He pushed the proposal aside with a dismissive flick and noted rejected on the list of contenders. When the selection committee met the next day, Rashid recommended a German firm known for its standard steel and concrete design. Reliable, predictable, expensive, elegant, in the traditional Dubai way. When an official asked about the Filipino proposal, Rashid didn't mince words. "It's reckless," he said with quiet confidence. "We aren't building a resort. We're building the future." Few dared question him. Reputation can hold a heavy weight, heavier than innovation, and that weight almost cost them an engineering breakthrough no one saw coming. Among the officials and developers assembled to choose the lead firm, Rashid's voice carried authority, honed by decades of precision and success. The German proposal was elegant in its simplicity. Clean steel frameworks, predictable load paths, reinforced concrete cores, every calculation backed by decades of precedent. When the sustainability metrics came up, the German bid scored respectably, though not exceptionally. Carlos Garcia's proposal, meanwhile, was barely mentioned. Rashid, confident in his convictions, fended off any suggestion that innovation should outweigh certainty and experience. He wasn't dismissive out of ignorance. He simply believed that something as critical as structural integrity in a high-rise should not be entrusted to materials without a long history of use in that environment. In Dubai, where sandstorms, wind shear, and desert heat test even the most advanced materials, tradition had proven its worth. Debate was minimal. Few questioned Rashid's recommendation. After all, his track record was impeccable. The committee voted, and the German firm was awarded the contract. That was that. Or so everyone thought. The Filipino proposal, thick with calculations and data, sat untouched on a shelf in Rashid's office. Rashid went about his business, unaware that something was unfolding beneath the surface, a quiet storm that would soon demand his attention, his humility, and ultimately his collaboration. The decision was final, but the lesson was only beginning. 3 weeks passed with little fanfare, and Rashid's decision seemed vindicated. The German engineers began preliminary work, mobilizing crews, setting up offices, and initiating foundation plans. Progress was on track, costs were within budget, and confidence was high. Then a simple email arrived in Rashid's inbox with a subject line that was almost gentle: clarification and invitation. It was from Carlos Garcia himself. The message was respectful, direct, and brief. Carlos acknowledged Rashid's concerns about bamboo integration and explained that there might have been a misunderstanding about the scale of testing and application. Then he wrote something unexpected: "I am in Dubai for a conference. If you have 30 minutes, I'd like to show you something." No obligation, engineer to engineer. Most people would have deleted it. Most would have never replied. But something in the tone, polite, earnest, unassuming, piqued Rashid's curiosity. Or perhaps it was an engineer's instinct to see before dismissing. So he replied, scheduling a meeting for the next afternoon at 2 p.m. 30 minutes, he wrote. That was all he offered. The next day, Carlos arrived in Rashid's office, lean calm, carrying a worn leather briefcase. When Rashid asked for the condensation of his proposal, Carlos didn't open file folders or slide long documents across the desk. Instead, he pulled out a small, unassuming bamboo cylinder, no thicker than a water bottle, and placed it gently on the desk. Rashid watched, with skepticism still perched at the edge of his thoughts, as Carlos unpacked his demonstration. It was simple, and before that hour was over, it would be transformative. Carlos's demonstration began with a humble bamboo cylinder secured in a metal clamp, nothing like the towering blueprints Rashid was used to seeing. Carlos explained the species, Dendrocalamus asper, a giant bamboo native to Southeast Asia, noted for its remarkable tensile strength. Rashid raised an eyebrow, but didn't speak. Carlos began adding weights to the bamboo cylinder, one by one, watching how it held each additional burden without significant deflection. Then, as Rashid leaned forward, curious despite himself, Carlos produced a steel tube of equivalent dimension and repeated the test. At just 8 kilograms of load, the steel bent noticeably. The bamboo hardly budged. Rashid's expression shifted from skepticism to intrigue. Carlos didn't stop there. He brought out a tablet and showed simulation videos, side-by-side comparisons of a 40-story structure during a 7.2 magnitude earthquake. The traditional steel frame model swayed violently, with joint failures appearing quickly. But the hybrid design incorporating bamboo lattices? It swayed, yes, but in a controlled, distributed motion, with no structural failures. Then Carlos spoke about carbon, how the hybrid design could make a massive structure carbon negative within 5 years. The data was not theoretical. He showed real precedent, a 12-story hybrid structure in Manila that survived Typhoon Manit with 0 structural damage, its neighbors buckling while it remained intact. Rashid stared at the screen silent. All his certainty, all his decades of tradition, suddenly felt like assumptions that had never been fully tested against evidence he had never seen. Rashid felt a flush of heat rise in his face, not just from embarrassment, but from the sudden realization that he had judged without full information. When he asked Carlos why the full documentation wasn't clearly presented in the original proposal, Carlos replied simply, "It was in the appendix, pages 47 to 63, but Rashid had stopped reading at page 20, dismissing the entire concept as unserious. That moment stung more than any professional critique. Rashid had let experience become assumption, confidence become rigidity. But Carlos continued without judgment. Engineering, he said quietly, isn't about what feels safe. It's about what the data shows. Rashid sat back, the bamboo cylinder still clamped on the desk between them, holding far more than anyone expected. For the first time in decades, Rashid felt uncertainty, not fear, but possibility. That evening, alone in his office, Rashid made a call he never thought he would make. He instructed his engineering team to run full wind load simulations on the German design using the updated wind data from the previous year's coastal storms. He didn't promise he would reopen the review. He only promised this: he would read the entire Filipino proposal, this time thoroughly. It was an admission that excellence sometimes demands humility. The results came back the next day, and they changed everything. The simulations revealed a startling truth. The German firm's design, long hailed as the safe, predictable choice, failed the wind load requirements by 8%. That meant expensive reinforcement work would be necessary, pushing the project over budget and behind schedule. When Rashid reconvened the committee, frustration was palpable. Months of groundwork and planning had to be reconsidered. The German engineers insisted their design was fundamentally sound, and they could address the gaps. But the data was not in their favor. Rashid stood before the committee, not with arrogance, but with the humility of someone who had learned a hard lesson. "I have a solution," he said, "but I know it won't be comfortable to hear at first." Then he presented Carlos's comprehensive proposal in full, not the initial misunderstanding, but the carefully tested simulations, the real-world precedent building in Manila, the hybrid bamboo steel models, and the demonstrable benefits in both seismic and wind performance. The room reacted with skepticism. Engineers questioned traditional load paths. Developers asked about maintenance and supply chains. Government officials wanted proven materials. But Rashid answered each question with evidence, not rhetoric, explaining that this was not a return to primitive methods, but a forward motion toward innovation that respected tradition and embraced proven performance. At first, the resistance was subtle, a quiet narrowing of eyes, hesitant nods, cautious frowns. But as data was presented, as simulations showed improved stress distribution, as the Manila precedent stood firm against nature's fury, opinions began to shift. By the time Rashid concluded, even the most skeptical committee member was studying the hybrid design with open curiosity. When the votes were tallied again, Garcia Engineering Solutions emerged victorious. The announcement sent ripples through the construction world, not because a Filipino firm had won a major Middle Eastern contract, but because it signaled something deeper, a willingness to disrupt tradition in favor of evidence-based innovation. Construction began 6 months later, and Rashid, once the staunchest traditionalist, found himself working shoulder to shoulder with Carlos and his team. This partnership was not easy at first. Engineers rooted in steel and concrete methodologies needed time to understand the logic of hybrid bamboo integration. But progress was tangible. The structure rose faster than expected, its foundation less massive, due to the lighter overall weight. Costs stayed under control, and by extrapolation, the carbon footprint was measurably lower than comparable high-rises. What surprised even Rashid most was not the performance data alone. It was the way teams adapted, learned, and began appreciating hybrid methods once they saw theory translated into practice. International journals took notice. Structural engineers who once dismissed the idea began visiting the site, notebooks in hand, asking questions they had never considered asking before. What had once been an experimental proposal became, in real time, evidence of resilient design that respected both tradition and innovation. Workers on the site spoke of a kind of excitement rarely felt on large jobs like this, the feeling that they were building something new, not merely replicating what had come before. As the tower climbed higher, it became a testament not only to structural ingenuity, but to the power of open-minded collaboration. The Emirates Green Tower was not just another project. It was the story of how assumptions were challenged, how tradition learned from indigenous wisdom, and how a Filipino blueprinter's persistence reshaped an entire industry's perspective. The construction world was shocked, and then inspired. Engineers from Europe, Asia, and the Americas began citing the Emirates Green Tower as a case study in hybrid materials. Conferences invited Carlos and Rashid to speak, not to debate tradition versus innovation, but to explain how evidence, when followed respectfully, can enhance long-held methodologies rather than replace them. Students enrolled in civil engineering programs asked professors about alternate materials, sustainability metrics, and hybrid load distribution models. Sustainability advocates referenced the carbon-negative potential of the tower's design. Traditionalists who once scoffed at the idea of bamboo now studied its properties with a new respect, not as folklore but as data-driven architecture. Carlos's firm received multiple inquiries from developers excited to explore hybrid frameworks in seismic zones like Japan and parts of California. Rashid, once unwavering in his preference for steel and concrete, found himself thinking differently about innovation. He discovered that excellence in engineering isn't tied to rigidity or precedent, but to continual curiosity, humility, and willingness to be proven wrong. The tower's completion was more than a construction milestone. It was a paradigmatic moment for an industry that often valued tradition over transformation. The Dubai skyline, already a mosaic of ambition, gained a new landmark that stood not just as glass and lattice, but as a symbol of what happens when innovation respects data and collaboration transcends bias. By the time the Emirates Green Tower topped out at 42 stories, 2 more than originally planned, the project was already being hailed as a breakthrough in modern urban architecture. Its lighter overall mass allowed for a smaller foundation footprint, which translated into cost savings. Builders could work faster without compromising safety. Sustainability experts pointed to the building as a benchmark for future vertical design in megacities around the world. And yet, it wasn't the performance data alone that captured global attention. It was the story of its creation. The Filipino engineer whose blueprint was rejected, the seasoned expert who dismissed it, and the unexpected collaboration that changed an industry's trajectory. Carlos and Rashid's partnership became a case study in mentorship reborn, not because one taught the other, but because they learned from each other. As they walked the site during the final installation phase, Carlos spoke softly about his upbringing in Manila, where bamboo structures weren't exotic ideas but lived reality. Rashid listened, recounting how ingrained professional biases once blinded him. In that mutual exchange of stories and respect, something remarkable occurred. Mutual admiration, not competition, became the foundation upon which the tower truly rose. It was a structure built on shared aspiration, not ego, on evidence, not assumption. When the Emirates Green Tower won the International Sustainable Architecture Award 8 months later, Rashid made sure Carlos stood beside him. It was not just an award for innovation, but an acknowledgement that excellence can emerge from unexpected sources. The award ceremony was unlike any Rashid had attended in his 30-year career. Designed to honor architectural ingenuity and forward-thinking engineering, the event brought together luminaries from across the globe, scholars, innovators, critics, builders, and policymakers. Rashid, once a figure rooted in tradition, delivered a speech that surprised everyone in attendance. He spoke not of his accomplishments, but of what he had learned. His words echoed through the hall. For decades, he believed expertise meant unwavering certainty, but he had discovered that true expertise requires an openness to listen. It demands that we approach evidence with humility, not rigidity. It requires recognizing that brilliance isn't confined by geography, ethnicity, or institutional pedigree. He pointed to Carlos beside him, lean, humble, and holding the same award, and said the greatest innovations often come from those who are underestimated. The audience sat in rapt silence, moved by the honesty and depth of Rashid's transformation. Many saw in his journey a model for their own fields. That growth often begins at the edge of discomfort, when pride yields to curiosity. After the ceremony, journalists clamored for interviews. Structural magazines ran feature spreads. Scholars cited the project in research on sustainable materials. In architecture schools, students debated hybrid designs with fervor. But among all the acclaim and analysis, the most profound acknowledgement came from within, from Rashid's own realization that excellence transcends convention, and that sometimes the strongest foundations are not just physical, but intellectual and emotional. As press and publicity swirled, Carlos returned to Manila briefly, where the local engineering community greeted him with pride and excitement. Students approached him with questions about tensile strength, simulation modeling, and hybrid materials. Professors invited him to speak at universities that had seldom imagined their graduates influencing megaprojects in the Middle East. Locals celebrated not just the tower, but what it represented, a Filipino innovation respectfully acknowledged on a global stage. Carlos spoke to young engineers about resilience, patience, and evidence-based innovation. He reminded them that every blueprint begins with a question, and every question begins with curiosity. Back in Dubai, he and Rashid began planning their next collaboration. not only on buildings, but on workshops, research initiatives, and design symposiums aimed at bridging traditional engineering and unconventional possibilities. The success of the Emirates Green Tower opened doors not just for Garcia engineering solutions, but for a new generation of engineers ready to rethink assumptions, value data over bias, and embrace hybrid solutions that balance strength, sustainability, and creativity. What had once been imaginative speculation was now part of lived experience, influencing decisions in cities poised for climate resilience and sustainable urban growth. In every lecture, every journal article, and every symposium panel, the story of bamboo's unexpected triumph, tempered by evidence and collaboration, became a touchstone for what's possible when ingenuity meets opportunity. Despite global praise, not everyone reacted with open arms. Some traditionalists criticized the proliferation of bamboo in engineering, arguing that its applicability was limited and context-dependent. They questioned whether the Manila precedent could be replicated in all environments, climates, and soil conditions. Their criticisms were rigorous, backed by technical questions and demand for further testing. Yet, that debate, once seen as controversy, fueled deeper exploration rather than rejection. Research teams around the world began experimenting with hybrid materials, combining indigenous materials with modern frameworks in ways that honored both tradition and scientific precision. Sustainability advocates endorsed multi-material approaches, emphasizing carbon reduction, resilience, and adaptability to ecological stresses. Environmental engineers started publishing comparative studies showing how hybrid designs could withstand hurricanes, earthquakes, and thermodynamic stress more effectively than single material monoliths. As the discourse matured, the conversation moved beyond skepticism toward possibility. The impact of the Emirates Green Tower became a catalyst for global exploration into hybrid architecture, transforming what once seemed novel into a legitimate research frontier. In professional circles, young engineers spoke of low-carbon futures not as idealistic concepts, but as tangible design goals. Universities expanded curriculums to include hybrid load analysis. Construction firms began allocating budgets for material innovation research. In these developments, Carlos and Rashid's story was not the endpoint, but the opening chapter of a new era in engineering thinking. Rashid eventually reflected that before meeting Carlos, he had been operating with a sense of earned authority that slowly calcified into assumption. Success, he realized, can be both an asset and a blindfold. Confidence that isn't continually tested against new evidence becomes complacency in disguise. Walking through the tower's nearly completed floors, Rashid often found himself pausing to observe the integration of bamboo lattices with steel beams, not as a skeptic, but as an admirer of elegant engineering logic. The way natural material and industrial strength coexisted in a building that reached toward the sky was more than symbolic. It was a reminder that innovation doesn't abandon tradition, it expands it. Workers spoke of the satisfaction of constructing something that meaningfully pushed boundaries. Architects pondered how future urban environments could integrate ecological wisdom with modern needs. And policymakers, impressed by the tower's performance data, began considering incentives for sustainable materials in public infrastructure projects. Rashid and Carlos found themselves not just partners, but advocates for a design philosophy rooted in evidence, respect for nature, and community impact. Their friendship became an emblem of cross-cultural collaboration that honored both science and heritage. In architecture journals, illustrations of the tower's hybrid lattice became case studies. In classrooms, students used its data in simulation labs. And everywhere the message spread, great engineering demands curiosity first, confidence second. At the grand opening ceremony, dignitaries, scholars, and engineers gathered under the towering silhouette of the Emirates Green Tower. The evening sky was alive with light, and across the plaza stood Rashid and Carlos, sharing a moment of quiet pride that had nothing to do with ego and everything to do with transformation. As the audience applauded, Rashid remembered the first time he laughed at a bamboo blueprint from Manila. Back then, he believed he understood engineering fully. Today, he understood how little he had known. Carlos's story was not one of overnight success. It was a testament to patience, Years of testing, refining, believing, and trusting data when intuition alone wasn't enough. Their collaboration wasn't engineered by coincidence. It was engineered by courage. The courage to revisit assumptions, revisit tradition, and make room for evidence that challenged the status quo. Former critics stood near them now, applauding the tower's achievement and envisioning future applications of hybrid design. When Rashid spoke to the audience later that night, his words resonated with sincerity. "True engineering excellence," he said, "comes from evidence, not assumption." And sometimes, the greatest discoveries arise from ideas dismissed too quickly. News of the tower's success spread beyond architectural circles. Environmental groups referenced it as a benchmark in sustainable urban development. Economists highlighted its lower construction cost and reduced maintenance footprint. Urban planners studied its design as a model for resilient cities facing climate shifts. Investors began exploring hybrid materials as a promising sector. But perhaps the most profound impact was personal. Young Filipino engineers, once hesitant to pitch bold ideas, saw in Carlos's journey a blueprint for possibility. Students asked themselves not what was safe, but what was next. Professors revised curricula to include multi-material stress analysis and carbon sequestration design. Workshops sprouted where engineers, architects, and environmental scientists collaborated in ways never seen before. In these gatherings, people spoke not with rigid certainty, but with shared curiosity, a curiosity that drove innovation beyond what anyone had expected. The tower became more than a structure. It became a catalyst. It stood as proof that ideas from unexpected places, when backed by rigorous data and courage, can reshape industries. In classrooms from Manila to Madrid, students saw in its latticework a metaphor for interconnected progress, a reminder that knowledge, like architecture, thrives where foundations are strengthened, not isolated. In Manila, Garcia Engineering Solutions became a symbol of what Filipino innovation could achieve when given space, respect, and opportunity. Aspiring engineers filled lecture halls, eager to study structural properties of indigenous materials, not as quaint tradition, but as cutting-edge design elements. The company's office expanded rapidly, with teams tackling projects that married ecological wisdom and technical precision. And yet, amidst growth, Carlos remained grounded, often reminding young engineers that humility was as important as brilliance. He spoke of collaboration, not competition, of learning, not proving. Back in Dubai, Rashid continued advocating for evidence-based innovation in a field often entrenched in precedent. Together, they worked on multiple projects that extended hybrid design principles into bridges, cultural centers, and earthquake-resilient buildings in seismic zones. What once seemed unorthodox became a rich seam of sustainable development. Their contributions rippled outward, affecting materials science research, engineering ethics discussions, and urban resilience strategies. And in every lecture, every panel, every blueprint shared, the legacy of the Emirates Green Tower endured not as a curiosity, but as a cornerstone of a more open, humble, and evidence-driven engineering future. But beyond the accolades, the contracts, and the academic recognition, the most important lesson lingered in quiet conversations between Rashid and Carlos. Years after that first rejected proposal, they often reflected on how a single moment, a discarded folder on a mahogany desk, had led to systemic change. They acknowledged that true innovation rarely arrives wrapped in prestige and assumption. More often, it comes hidden beneath layers of bias, waiting for someone willing to listen. They spoke about how pride can limit progress and how curiosity can expand it. More than once, they discussed humility as a structural principle in itself, the openness to reassess one's beliefs in the face of evidence. And in these reflections, they found deeper meaning than any award. The architecture of their friendship was built not just on professional respect, but on mutual transformation, a reminder that structures, like people, are strongest not when they resist change, but when they adapt with integrity. Their story became living proof that excellence respects tradition without being its captive, and that the greatest innovations honor both data and diversity of thought. Years later, when global engineering thought leaders gathered to commemorate a decade of sustainable transformation in urban design, the Emirates Green Tower was still cited as a foundational turning point. Its legacy was not measured merely in floors or awards, but in how it shifted perspectives and opened doors to possibilities previously unimagined. Young engineers visited the site as pilgrims of inspiration, studying the bamboo steel latticework as if encountering a new language of design. Academics debated its implications in journals. Environmentalists hailed its carbon performance as a benchmark. And in every homage, the names Garcia and al-Mansuri appeared, not as rivals but as partners in progress. Their story countered the notion that innovation must come from established centers of power. It proved that innovation can arise anywhere, at any time, when humility meets evidence and courage meets curiosity. It also underscored a deeper truth beloved by educators and practitioners alike, that knowledge unshared stagnates, but knowledge tested enriches the world. And so, the tower soared not just in steel and bamboo, but in imagination. At the cornerstone ceremony of a new hybrid design bridge in Manila's Bay District, engineers, students, and planners gathered. Photos of the Emirates Green Tower lined the venue walls, reminding attendees of how far the industry had evolved. A banner read, "Innovation Beyond Borders." And below it, families, colleagues, and young dreamers stood shoulder to shoulder, telling stories of how that first rejected blueprint became a global turning point. The engineer who once dismissed it, Rashid, now spoke with reverence about taking the time to truly understand. Carlos, his friend and collaborator, shared his vision for sustainable futures rooted in respect for both data and culture. Children listened to grown UPS explain that great ideas aren't always loud. Sometimes they arrive in humble proposals, quiet evidence, and respectful persistence. The crowd cheered not just for a bridge, but for a mindset that had opened possibilities worldwide. And somewhere in that crowd, a young engineer whispered to a friend, "What bold idea will we challenge next?" That whisper, filled with possibility and courage, was perhaps the truest testament to what had happened next, a world reshaped not by rejection, but by receptiveness, evidence, and humility.